Hello, true crime enthusiasts and history buffs alike. Welcome back to our channel, where we peel back the layers of the past to uncover the stories that have shaped our present. Today, we're diving into a chilling chapter of American history, with a tale that seems ripped from a noir thriller, yet is as real as it gets. We're talking about the killers of the Flower Moon, the sinister saga of greed, murder, and the Osage Nation. So, grab your detective hats, because we're about to embark on a journey through a dark and twisting tale of crime. In the early 20th century, the Osage Nation in Oklahoma struck gold, or more accurately, oil. Beneath their reservation lay vast reserves of black gold that brought unimaginable wealth to the Osage people. By the 1920s, they were considered the richest per capita group in the world, their wealth eclipsing that of the tycoons and industrial magnates of the day. But with great wealth came envy and avarice from those who eyed their fortunes with greedy intent. The Reign of Terror. What followed was a period known as the Reign of Terror. Osage members started dying under mysterious circumstances. There were shootings, poisonings, and what appeared to be accidents but were, in truth, anything but. As bodies piled up, the community lived in fear, not knowing who would be targeted next or who could be trusted. It was a calculated and cold-blooded series of crimes that targeted the very heart of the Osage Nation. The investigation unfolds. Enter the then-fledgling Federal Bureau of Investigation, taking on one of its first major homicide cases. The Osage murders presented an intricate puzzle that the FBI, under the direction of a young J. Edgar Hoover, was determined to solve. As agents infiltrated the community, undercover and in disguise, a conspiracy began to unravel, one that implicated seemingly respectable members of society who had a hand in the deadly scheme. The masterminds behind the murders. The masterminds behind the Osage murders were none other than those who the Osage had once considered allies and friends. These wolves in sheep's clothing included local businessmen, lawmen, and even spouses of the Osage. Their motive was simple: to claim the wealth of the Osage through marriage and murder, an insidious plan that involved manipulating laws and the guardianship system to gain control over the Osage fortunes. The echoes of injustice. The trials that followed exposed the corruption and racism festering in the heart of America, leading to convictions and a national outcry. However, justice for the Osage was incomplete, with many murders unsolved and perpetrators left unpunished. The Reign of Terror had a profound and lasting impact on the Osage Nation and the course of American criminal justice, highlighting the need for systemic change and the protection of indigenous rights. The lessons learned. As storytellers and seekers of truth, we must delve into these dark corners of history to bring to light the lessons they hold. The Osage murders serve as a grim reminder that when laws and systems fail to protect the vulnerable, tragedy can ensue. It's a call to vigilance and advocacy for justice and equity in our communities. The power of resilience. Yet, amidst the sorrow and horror, there lies a story of resilience. The Osage Nation, despite the trauma and loss, persists and thrives today, a community indomitable in spirit. Their journey from the Reign of Terror to a beacon of cultural preservation and tribal sovereignty is a narrative that deserves to be honored and celebrated. The role of media, and what of us, the media consumers and creators? We hold the power to shed light on stories forgotten or overlooked. By discussing and disseminating such tales, we pay homage to the victims and ensure that the lessons of the past are not lost to future generations. Reflecting on today, in modern times, the story of the Osage Nation is a powerful testament to the importance of preserving history, not just in books and documentaries, but in the collective memory of our society. The oil beneath the Osage land brought both fortune and ruin, a duality that teaches us about the complexities of wealth and the often predatory nature of those who seek it without conscience. Engaging with the present. As we journey beyond the past and into the present, we see how the legacy of the Osage Nation has influenced contemporary discussions on indigenous rights and natural resources. Today, there is a growing movement towards acknowledging historical wrongs and taking steps to ensure that history does not repeat itself. The importance of advocacy. Advocacy for indigenous communities has seen a resurgence, with more voices joining the chorus calling for reform and restitution. Stories like those of the Osage Nation serve as catalysts for change, inspiring individuals and organizations to act in support of those whose voices were once silenced. Embracing cultural heritage, we also see a resurgence of pride in indigenous cultures, languages, and traditions. The Osage Nation, like many indigenous communities, is embracing its heritage, ensuring that its language and customs are passed down to future generations. This cultural revival is a testament to their strength and determination to not just survive, but thrive. Education and awareness. Part of our role in the media is to educate and raise awareness. By bringing these historical events to light, we encourage our viewers to learn more about the Osage Nation and indigenous history as a whole. Understanding the past is crucial to making informed decisions that shape a more just and equitable future. Call to action. So what can you as a viewer do? First, educate yourself about the indigenous communities in your area and their histories. Support indigenous artists, businesses, and educational initiatives. Advocate for the protection of indigenous rights and be a part of the movement towards justice and reconciliation. Exploring the legacy. Our story of the Osage Nation's struggle during the Reign of Terror provides a solemn reflection on the past, but also sparks a crucial conversation about the enduring legacy of such events. How do they continue to resonate in today's society? Let's explore that further. Ongoing legal reforms. In the wake of historical injustices like the Osage murders, there have been calls for and implementations of legal reforms aimed at better protecting the rights of indigenous peoples. These include laws that recognize the sovereignty of tribal nations and those that aim to address the disparities in legal protections for indigenous communities, cultural recognition, and representation. The story has also underscored the importance of cultural recognition. Representation in media, education, and politics has slowly improved, allowing for a more inclusive narrative that honors the diverse histories of indigenous peoples. By bringing these stories into the mainstream, we contribute to a broader understanding and appreciation of indigenous cultures. Environmental stewardship. The exploitation of the Osage's natural resources also parallels current conversations about environmental stewardship and the rights of indigenous communities to manage and benefit from their lands. It's a powerful reminder of the need for sustainable practices that respect the land and those who have been its custodians for generations. Continued advocacy and support. Supporting the Osage Nation and similar communities doesn't end with just awareness. It's about ongoing advocacy and support. It means standing in solidarity with the efforts to preserve indigenous lands, rights, and cultures. It involves being an ally in the fight against the systemic issues that continue to affect indigenous peoples. Memorializing the past. As a society, we seek to memorialize our history to ensure that the tragedies and triumphs of our past are not forgotten. The story of the Osage Nation has found its way into books, films, and museums, serving as a poignant reminder and a vehicle for education. The impact on policy. The events that unfolded in the early 20th century have had a profound impact on policy, particularly concerning the rights and sovereignty of indigenous peoples. These policies are ever evolving, with ongoing efforts to strengthen the protection of cultural heritage and to ensure that the benefits derived from natural resources are shared equitably. Community initiatives. Community initiatives have also sprung from the ashes of this dark period. The Osage Nation and its allies have spearheaded programs that aim to preserve the Osage language, culture, and way of life. These initiatives serve as a beacon of hope and resilience, showcasing the power of a community to rise from adversity. Educational outreach. Educational outreach programs have also been vital in spreading awareness. By integrating the story of the Osage Nation into curricula, seminars, and public discourse, we ensure that the next generation is better informed and more compassionate towards the struggles of Indigenous peoples. The role of individuals. Finally, the role of individuals in carrying this legacy forward cannot be understated. Each person has the power to make a difference, whether by supporting Indigenous-led organizations, advocating for policy change, or simply by sharing the story of the Osage Nation with others. Preservation of history. The Osage Nation's narrative is a critical piece of American history, and its preservation is essential. Museums and cultural centers dedicated to Indigenous history play a pivotal role in this preservation. They are the custodians of artifacts, photographs, and oral histories that tell the story of the Osage people before, during, and after the Reign of Terror. Modern-day advocacy. The echoes of the past are heard in modern-day advocacy efforts. The fight for justice continues as Indigenous groups lead legal battles to protect their lands from exploitation and to demand the federal government honor treaties. It's a struggle that resonates with many other Indigenous nations across the globe. Integrating into mainstream awareness. The integration of Indigenous histories, like that of the Osage, into mainstream awareness is not just beneficial, it's necessary for a holistic understanding of national history. By acknowledging the mistakes of the past, society can avoid repeating them and move towards a more equitable future. Economic development. The Osage Nation's story also underlines the importance of economic development and self-determination. Today, many Indigenous communities are at the forefront of sustainable economic practices, utilizing natural resources responsibly and ensuring that the benefits serve the community. Concluding reflections. As we wrap up this extensive look into the legacy of the Osage Nation, let's honor their memory by committing to informed action. The journey through this dark period in American history is not just about looking back. It's about moving forward with a new understanding and a renewed resolve to do better. I thank you profoundly for your engagement with this series. Your interest in these matters is more than just passive viewership. It's an active step towards broader change. Together, we're not only uncovering the past, but also shaping a narrative for the future. Legacy of Law and Justice. The Osage murders, as recounted in Killers of the Flower Moon, were not just a sequence of criminal acts, but also a pivotal moment in the evolution of American law enforcement. It marked one of the FBI's first major homicide investigations, setting precedents for how such cases would be handled in the future. The methodical approach taken by investigators at that time laid the groundwork for modern forensic science. They gathered meticulous evidence, which was a novelty in an era when much of law enforcement relied on confession rather than conviction by physical evidence. This approach has since become the cornerstone of criminal investigation procedures. Moreover, the case highlighted the need for federal law enforcement in matters where local authorities might be compromised. This was a turning point that bolstered the argument for a strong central agency, leading to the expansion of the FBI's powers and jurisdiction. Cultural reflection and education. Killers of the Flower Moon has also sparked a cultural conversation about the representation of Native American history in media. The story is not just a tale of crime and justice, but also a reflection on how Indigenous narratives are presented. It raises questions about whose stories are told and who gets to tell them, prompting a push for Indigenous authors, filmmakers, and educators to be at the forefront of such narratives. This tragic chapter in American history is also becoming a part of educational curricula, helping students understand the complex dynamics between the U.S. government and Native American tribes. By examining the Osage murders, learners can better grasp issues of racism, greed, and the struggle for power that have marred the relationships between these communities and the federal authorities. Economic exploitation and sovereignty. The economic exploitation of the Osage Nation's resources was a central theme of the murders. It serves as a case study of the broader exploitation of indigenous lands and resources throughout history. Today, there is an ongoing debate about resource extraction on native lands, and the Osage story is often cited in discussions of how to balance economic development with the sovereignty and rights of indigenous peoples. The road to healing. Lastly, the road to healing for the Osage Nation and other indigenous communities involves recognizing and addressing the historical injustices they have faced. The awareness raised by stories like Killers of the Flower Moon is a part of this healing process, leading to more significant steps toward restitution and reconciliation. The Osage Nation's resilience is a testament to their strength and the unyielding spirit of a people who, despite the odds, continue to fight for their rights, their sovereignty, and the respectful remembrance of their ancestors. Impact on American society and legal system. The Osage murders had a profound impact on American society, exposing deep-rooted prejudices and systemic corruption that, at the time, seemed insurmountable. It challenged the nation to confront the grim reality of how marginalized communities were treated and sparked a movement towards greater legal protections for indigenous peoples. The birth of modern forensic science. One of the pivotal outcomes of the investigations surrounding the Osage murders was the advancement of forensic science. The meticulous collection of evidence, the use of emerging technologies such as fingerprinting, and the introduction of ballistics all received a significant boost. This case set a precedent that ultimately became a foundation for the FBI's Scientific Crime Detection Laboratory, established a few years later. Institutional changes in law enforcement. The investigation brought about by the Osage murders also forced changes in law enforcement agencies across the country. It revealed the necessity of interagency cooperation and the establishment of federal oversight in cases where local law enforcement might be compromised. This led to significant changes in how law enforcement agencies operate, with an emphasis on integrity and professionalism. Awareness and advocacy. The shocking nature of the Osage murders brought national attention to the plight of Native Americans and laid bare the exploitation and disenfranchisement they faced. This prompted advocacy groups to work tirelessly to bring about legislative changes, ensuring better protection of Native American rights and sovereignty. Reflection in modern media. The story of the Osage Nation struggle has continued to find resonance in modern media, often serving as a sobering reminder of the past injustices. It has inspired filmmakers, writers, and artists to explore themes of justice, exploitation, and resilience, fostering a deeper understanding and appreciation of Native American history and culture. Conclusion: a continuing journey towards justice. As we conclude this segment, it's clear that the legacy of the Osage murders is still very much alive. The journey towards justice and equality for the Osage Nation and all indigenous peoples is ongoing. It's a stark reminder of the need for vigilance in protecting the rights of all citizens and ensuring that the darker chapters of our history are not repeated. Killers of the Flower Moon is not just a tale of past atrocities, but also a beacon for future generations to continue striving for a fair and just society. By learning from these historical events, we honor the memory of those lost and reaffirm our commitment to a future where such injustices are relics of the past. Legacy of law and justice. The Osage murders, as recounted in Killers of the Flower Moon, were not just a sequence of criminal acts, but also a pivotal moment in the evolution of American law enforcement. It marked one of the FBI's first major homicide investigations, setting precedents for how such cases would be handled in the future. The methodical approach taken by investigators at that time laid the groundwork for modern forensic science. They gathered meticulous evidence, which was a novelty in an era when much of law enforcement relied on confession rather than conviction by physical evidence. This approach has since become the cornerstone of criminal investigation procedures. Moreover, the case highlighted the need for federal law enforcement in matters where local authorities might be compromised. This was a turning point that bolstered the argument for a strong central agency leading to the expansion of the FBI's powers and jurisdiction. Cultural reflection and education. Killers of the Flower Moon has also sparked a cultural conversation about the representation of Native American history in media. The story is not just a tale of crime and justice, but also a reflection on how Indigenous narratives are presented. It raises questions about whose stories are told and who gets to tell them, prompting a push for Indigenous authors, filmmakers, and educators to be at the forefront of such narratives. This tragic chapter in American history is also becoming a part of educational curricula, helping students understand the complex dynamics between the U.S. government and Native American tribes. By examining the Osage murders, learners can better grasp issues of racism, greed, and the struggle for power that have marred the relationships between these communities and the federal authorities. In conclusion, Killers of the Flower Moon is more than a historical account. It is a narrative that continues to resonate deeply within the tapestry of American society. It challenges us to reflect on the past, to learn from it, and to ensure that justice and respect for all peoples form the bedrock of our future. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, and share. Don't forget to leave your comment.